Football, we need to talk. Something has gone seriously wrong with the transfer market, and honestly, it's getting out of hand. Last year, Premier League clubs alone spent a jaw-dropping £3 billion in a single window, smashing the previous record of £2.36 billion set back in 2023. And it means English clubs spent more than Spain, Italy, France and Germany combined. Let that sink in for a second. We all know how well that went for teams like Liverpool, don't we? So today, we're not celebrating the market, we're calling it out. These are 7 players who, for one reason or another, simply don't deserve their insane transfer fees. Ready? Let's get into it. Let's kick things off with a name that had all of England talking this summer, Elliot Anderson. Now don't get me wrong, Anderson is a good player, but £116 million for a midfielder with basically one standout season? Come on. Just 2 years ago, Nottingham Forest signed him from Newcastle for around £35 million. He had a brilliant campaign at the City ground, leading the entire Premier League in touches, duels won and possessions won. Genuinely impressive stuff. But then Manchester City came knocking and things got silly. A guaranteed £116 million. No add-ons, making Elliot Anderson the most expensive British footballer in history. More expensive than Jude Bellingham. More expensive than Declan Rice. This is a lad who was out on loan at Bristol Rovers in League One not that long ago. One great season and suddenly he's carrying a 9-figure price tag. That's not a valuation, guys. That's the market losing its mind. And speaking of the market losing its mind, let's head down to North London, where Tottenham decided to break their transfer record not once but twice in the space of a few days. First up, their marquee man, Sandro Tonali. Rewind to 2023. And Newcastle signed this Italian midfielder from AC Milan for around £55 million. That was quite expensive back then, and it didn't start well. Tonali was hit with a 10-month betting ban that wiped out most of his first season, but to his credit, he came back, knuckled down, and turned himself into one of the finest midfielders in the Premier League. So far, so good. Here's where it gets ridiculous. This summer, Spurs agreed a club record deal worth up to £100 million to prize him away from St James Park, on top of wages reportedly north of £275,000 a week. Is Tonali a good player? Absolutely. But £100 million for a 26-year-old joining a side that flirted with relegation last season? That's not a football fee anymore. That's monopoly money. Newcastle banked a tidy £45 million profit and probably couldn't believe their luck. But this is not a one-off for Spurs. Barely few days before, they'd already smashed their record on another midfielder, Matheus Fernandes. And this one really makes you scratch your head. Just 12 months ago, West Ham signed the young Portuguese from a relegated Southampton for an initial £38 million. He had a decent enough debut season in London, 4 goals, 4 assists, nothing that screamed superstar. Then relegation struck again, this time for West Ham. And here's the kicker, even with the Hammers dropping into the Championship, Spurs still came in and paid a club record £85 million, seeing off Manchester United in the process. £85 million for a 21-year-old leaving a relegated club, essentially the biggest sale a Championship-bound side has ever made. Talented? No doubt, but that price? For one modest Premier League campaign, the market has well and truly lost the plot. Now let's leave the Premier League behind and cross over to Spain, because Barcelona have been at it too. Their big summer arrival, Anthony Gordon. The Catalan Giants paid Newcastle a package worth up to €80 million for the England winger. And look, Gordon is quick, direct and versatile. No complaints about the talent. But here's the thing that raises eyebrows. Yes, he scored 17 goals last season, but 10 of those came in the Champions League. In the Premier League itself, he managed just 6. So Barcelona have essentially spent €80 million on a player whose best form was reserved for a dozen European nights. When your league numbers don't match your price tag, that's usually a red flag. And at the Camp Nou, the pressure to justify that fee will be enormous. And now, let's talk about a striker who's just cost AC Milan a club record fee, Goncalo Ramos. The Rossoneri splashed a club record fee of around €74 million to bring the Portuguese forward over from Paris Saint-Germain. Sounds reasonable for a proven goalscorer, right? Well, here's the catch. At PSG, Ramos was largely a squad player, a very good option off the bench, but rarely a guaranteed starter in that star-studded front line. He won back-to-back Champions League titles in Paris, sure, but often watching the biggest moments from the sidelines. So Milan have made a bit-part player their most expensive signing ever. That's a huge gamble on potential rather than proven week-in, week-out output. Brave? Yes. Sensible? The jury's very much out. Which brings me neatly to a player who might not have moved yet, but whose asking price sums up this entire madness, Yanio Mande. just last summer, RB Leipzig plucked this Ivorian winger from Spanish side Leganés for around 20 million euros. And get this, before that move, his entire senior career amounted to 6 starts for a Leganés team that got relegated. 6 starts! Even Leipzig's own captain admitted he assumed there'd been a typo in the fee. Fair play, the kid delivered 12 goals, 9 assists, and Bundesliga Rookie of the Season in his debut campaign. But now Leipzig are reportedly holding out for as much as 130 million euros, with Liverpool and PSG circling. That's 6 times what they paid 12 months ago for a 19-year-old with 1 season under his belt. One good year does not make you a 130 million euro footballer. It makes you a very expensive gamble in shiny wrapping paper. And finally, let's round things off with perhaps the most puzzling one of the lot, Ederson. And no, not the goalkeeper, the midfielder. Manchester United paid Atalanta a package worth up to 45 million euros for the Brazilian. Now, on the surface, that's not outrageous money in today's market. But dig a little deeper and the questions pile up. This is a 26-year-old who doesn't even start regularly for Brazil. He's got just a handful of senior caps to his name. His Champions League experience is limited and his goal and assist output has always been modest. Solid, yes. A reliable Serie A midfielder? Absolutely. But for a Manchester United desperate to rebuild and compete at the very top, spending that kind of money on a player who can't nail down a place in his own national side feels like another swing that may well miss. And Old Trafford has seen plenty of those lately. And there you have it, 7 players carrying price tags that, let's be honest, belong in a game of fantasy football rather than the real thing. Now, here's the important bit. This isn't about saying these lads are bad players, not at all. Anderson, Tonali, Gordon, these are talented footballers who could go on to have brilliant careers. The problem isn't the players, it's the numbers. Somewhere along the way, the transfer market stopped asking, what is this player worth? And started asking, how much can we possibly get away with? And when a relegated team's midfielder costs £85 million and a 19-year-old with 1 good season is valued at 130 million euros, you have to wonder where it all ends. Maybe some of these signings will silence the doubters and prove every penny was justified. Football has a funny way of making us all look silly, but right now, sitting here today, these fees feel less like smart business and more like clubs throwing money into a bonfire. So what do you think? Did I get any of these wrong? Is there a player I've missed who's an even bigger waste of money? Drop their name in the comments. I will read every single one. And I'd love to hear who's on your list. And if you enjoyed this video, you know exactly what to do. Smash that like button, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next one. Catch you in the next video. Take care.
Well, you've asked for it and we've finally delivered. Relive the glory days with the most iconic designs in football history. Whether you're a fan of classic club colours or legendary international strips, we've got something to ignite your nostalgia. Perfect for match days, casual wear or adding to your collection. Shop the new retro range now at goal90.shop. Massive discounts await.